I don't have religious trauma, so I can just walk into all of these beautiful rituals like a fresh little lamb and see, nothing but the good vibes. I absolutely love mikveh, and I reinterpreted the ritual to make it fit my life better. So it became an experience for like me and my body rather than actually anything to do with my marriage.
Hello everyone! Welcome back to this channel. My name is Frida Weisel, and here I explore topics related to Judaism, New York City, culture, and my specialty, Orthodox Judaism, which is the world that I come from and have a great curiosity about. Today, I'll be talking to Jewish comedian and friend Antonia Lazar. Antonia and I are together fellows in the Mundell Cultural Leadership Program, and I wanted to talk to her for my channel from when we met. Antonia comes from a very different Jewish background, and we both have had glimpses of different parts of the Jewish world, and we both make content about it, so I thought it would be great to have some discussions here. Antonia Lazar is a comedian who has been featured by JFL, toured venues like the New Repertory Theater, Yale, UC Berkeley, was featured in Marie Claire and Glamour magazine, and regularly performs stand-up around LA and at Your Mom's Synagogue. She also is a song leader at Ikar, which means she's a master at leading singing get-togethers. Hi, Antonia.
Hi, Frida. I'm so excited this is happening.
Oh, I am so excited too. I've been waiting for quite a while. It took us forever to make this happen.
I know.
How are you doing?
Great. I'm so excited to be on your podcast. I feel like your audience never comes into contact with my work. They're like, our audiences are different sides of the Jewish world, and so I'm excited to be here.
We're gonna be a bridge.
We're gonna be a super group.
A super group? Okay.
Yeah.
2 people in a super group.
Yeah.
I have prepared an opening question for you. Because you're a comedian, I feel like I can ask big opening questions. Are you ready? It's gonna be a challenging one.
I'm so ready.
Okay. What type of Jew are you, Antonia? Can you explain to my audience?
That is a good question. That is sort of the question I like to start every conversation with.
Always, like at a checkout counter in the grocery.
Exactly.
Always.
Just level the playing field.
Even if they're not Jewish.
Yeah. So, what kind of Jew are you? Prove it.
Prove it part gets a little scandalous there.
Okay, what kind of Jew am I? I mean, I feel like everyone has different categories that they're looking for in the answer. Like, some people want to know your denomination. Some people want to know, like, what you do as an observance level. Some people just want to know, like, the melodies you sing. So like, to go through all those possible definitions, I grew up Reform, hated every minute of it, and now as an adult, I am much more observant than I ever could have dreamed of as a child, and sort of split my time between a non-denominational synagogue in LA that could be maybe called conservative, except everyone hates the word conservative Judaism, and then a Chabad as well. So that's sort of where I fall denominationally, except I would say I'm more aligned with this like growing class of young Jews who refuses to be defined by a denomination, which is why the shul I go to is literally called non-denominational. And I have a theory that all of us actually do probably fall under the umbrella of conservative Judaism, but everyone hates conservative Judaism. So none of us are willing to claim that. So
interesting.
I'm somewhere there. I recently had a friend try and they were introducing me and they were like, this is Antonia, she's conservadox. And I thought it was so cute that they were like, I can't even just say conservative. I have to throw the docs
on
the end because it just makes it better.
Yeah, I can see why.
Yeah.
There's something about conservative that is like very it feels very boxy nowadays. Like It's like not orthodox. It doesn't have the intensity of orthodoxy, but it also doesn't have the openness. So I don't know. Are we gonna
Yeah.
bash on conservative, or should we start with reform? Talk about your why did you hate reform, Judy's?
Yeah, let's first bash reform before we get into bashing conservative, and then we can end with bashing orthodox, just so everyone. Yeah, we're not going to bash the Sephardic Jews because they get enough of that.
Yeah,
we can uplift someone.
we're not just bringing everyone down. We'll title it bashing various. No, we're not doing any of that. We're just gonna hear what did you not like about a part of what is very interesting to me is your journey seems to be you were raised without this intense Judaism that I was raised with, and then you were drawn to it. And when I meet you and I see what the causes you're interested in, the kind of empathy you have, like what your orientation is, I wouldn't think you're a Chabad Jew. I wouldn't think you're an Orthodox Jew, but you also have like this yearning neshama for like this. You seem to have a yearning for something that you were not raised with, which I find really interesting. So can you talk to me a little bit about what it meant to be raised Reform?
Yeah, definitely. And also, just before I answer that, like, first, some like more context for your audience as well. I think it might be helpful for them to know where I'm at right now, which is that I'm like basically a professional Jew. I'm a stand-up comedian who like performs almost exclusively at Jewish religious institutions. Judaism is both like my culture and my employment and my greatest hobby. So
I see. It might be mine too, so I relate.
Yeah, I think you're in exactly the same boat. It's like we're making art about our Jewishness, which means that our income is defined by our Jewish engagement, and so that's like all a really interesting picture. So that gives some perspective for how I grew up. So growing up Reform, I was in like the kind of typical Reform upbringing that I think a lot of kids in America have, which is that like we went to shul on the high holidays. I was forced to go to Hebrew school, which felt a lot like child abuse. I had a bat mitzvah. It was all boring and soulless. It felt like we were just doing these things because we had to, period, which I think, to be honest, is probably an experience that's common across denominations of Judaism, because Judaism in its worst form is rules for the sake of rules and nothing else. And so even the Reform Jews have managed to tap into that energy of just rules for social clout. You know, we went to shul because we had to look like good, upstanding members of Judaism. But then growing up Reform, we didn't get any of the other side either, which is like the spiritual connection, the transcendence, the like meaningfulness of being in this group of community who are like all going for something greater than ourselves. We didn't have any of that. We just had show up on Rosh Hashanah and suffer for a couple hours. So the whole thing just felt like BS to me, you know, and especially when people would try and use the word God in there, I was like, you think that us sitting here in these uncomfortable chairs for 4 hours and then going home and going on our phones is for God? Like, that was so, it seemed so wrong, and I just couldn't connect with it. I thought it was all dumb. And then
Interesting.
And then in college, I've always been, I would say, interested in the kind of transcendence that people get when they go to raves. I don't know if you've ever been to a rave, but like,
I've not, but I think I get the concept.
Yeah, you get the concept. I don't do drugs, and so I feel like I'm constantly looking for non-drug ways to achieve the feeling of drugs.
Yeah.
And the first place I felt that probably was the singing that happened back in synagogue as a child, those like brief moments of singing really good songs, and then it would all go away and we'd hear about some bullshit from the rabbi. And but then in college, I sort of accidentally stumbled into evangelical Christianity because they're so good at inviting people in, and I like found that they were doing music and spiritual connection in this way that I had like always been searching for, except that I hated every single thing they did other than the music and the spiritual connection. You know, the singing was like a 10 out of 10. Everything else was a nightmare. It was like, I mean, it was Jesus. It was like it was not queer friendly. It exoticized Jews in this really uncomfortable way. The first day that I walked in, they like showed a PowerPoint that was like, Jesus will save you from Satan. And then they had this like montage of pictures and symbols to refer to what Satan was. And it was like two men holding hands. And then it was like a yoga mat. And then it was like a bunch of like a Jewish star and an Islam symbol and like the coexist sticker. And I was just like, oh my God, like check, check, check. This is all me.
Wow.
So that was a like truly transformative step though in my religious journey, because I discovered that there like could be sort of spiritual transcendence and connection through music, mostly is like the way I feel it.
Yeah.
So then that brought me back to Judaism.
Did you ever get serious about your search outside of Judaism, or was it like, oh, you went for a couple of sessions?
No, oh, Frida, it was so serious. I was in the First Evangelical Church for 6 months, and then I had to move. And then I spent the next 2 years looking through evangelical churches. I spent another year living in an Episcopal rectory. That's like the house that the priest lives in, because I made friends with this Episcopal priest who was like really queer, and I really loved that, except their music wasn't good. But then I needed a place to live, and it just happened I moved into the rectory.
What does it mean to live in a rectory? What is it like?
It's just a house, except it happens to be connected to a church, and everybody who lived there went to the church. And
it wasn't like with nuns. It wasn't like a monastery or anything.
No. And normally it's just yeah. Normally it's like just
sounding wild.
It was like wonderful. Normally in the rectory it's just the priest and maybe their family, because in Episcopal Christianity they can have families.
Yeah, they get married. Yeah.
Except this priest, first of all, was a woman. Second of all, was in a long distance marriage, and so her husband and kid were living across the country, and they were like figuring that out. So she needed people in the house with her. So she tapped. There were 4 of us who moved in. It was a big house.
Wow. Did you have to provide a service in exchange for your housing?
No, rent.
How was your family about this?
Like at the very beginning, when I first started going to the church thing, they were horrified, as you would expect. I would say mostly because I was obnoxious about it. I never ever believed really in Jesus, but I would say more evangelical about like, you guys are missing out on spiritual connection in Reformed Judaism. You should try this like evangelical singing thing. They're amazing.
I see.
You know, and so,
you poor thing, you're looking for singing. You couldn't like just look for the singing itself. Like
I mean, like I've been in and out of all these places, but I always like rebel as soon as singing becomes about performance, which it usually is outside of religious spaces. And
that is such a good point.
It's mostly just religious spaces that do singing just for vibe, you know?
Yeah. I know. And it's so wonderful. It is like a drug.
Yes, it is. It really is. So so I spent probably 4 years in and out of Christian institutions, basically chasing the singing, and eventually kind of gave up on it because the internal conflict between being queer and being Jewish in these spaces was really hard, especially because the more evangelical the space, the more conservative space, the better the singing.
The singing.
And so I'd always be trying to go to the most conservative places and then trying to figure out how to like either hide or just like force my identity to fit in. And
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
Don't answer if you don't feel comfortable. I'm trying to understand why it was a problem for you that they weren't queer friendly, because you're like you're married to men,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Was are you not okay with this question?
No, it's a great question. Well, first of all, when I first started going to these churches, I was not in a relationship with a man. I was dating men and women. And also, so many of my friends are queer, pretty much almost all of them. It's just like a huge part of my life that it would feel, it's really difficult to be around people who are so unfriendly to it. That said, I also think that I am like the dream introduction to queer people, because like I'm married to a man, easy peasy, you know, eventually I can reveal, oh, I'm bisexual, and then everyone's like, oh, wow, that's crazy.
I see.
So I'm a good starter queer to go into those spaces.
You're an ambassador. I see.
Honestly, I think of myself a lot as an ambassador to queer people in like conservative spaces, and I love being that role. But
Are you also a professional queer person? Like you're a professional Jewish person?
oh, that's a good question. I guess my podcast is billed as the premier queer Jewish podcast on the internet, Yenta. So I guess it
Got
does
it.
sort of count.
I hear you. I feel like in the same way that Judaism is like my work, it's like my everything. So it's also my work. Womanhood is another one of those identifiers that are like, it's not just one thing. It's Judaism, it's womanhood that like are woven into every single aspect of my life. And also it becomes like everything I say, everything I think, like is defined by that.
Yeah.
Although I'm not a professional ambassador for womanhood. That part not.
No, but you're coming to the ambassador meeting later.
Yeah, I am going to the... We're
Yeah.
both going.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're both going. It's just going to be us. Me and you.
For women, that's so funny because I feel so unaffiliated with women in the way I feel unaffiliated with the movement of Judaism as well.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
But I also,
You seem to be anti-movement. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I'm contrarian is really what I am most deeply as an identity. But I also feel like I've reflected a lot on why I felt like the way I moved through these Christian spaces, and at the time I felt like it was a better experience for me if I just kept quiet about my differences with these Christians. And so I was like not talking about being queer. I was like not talking about like my outside life. And so there was an aspect of hiding. If I went back, and I do go back into those spaces all the time these days, I still have like a lot of friends in churches and still go to churches. And now the way I do it is completely different, where I just loudly say like, this is who you're getting. I'm Jewish. Feel free to try and convert me. You know, have at it. And that makes the experience so sustainable in a way that it wasn't before.
Yeah.
So that's also why my like relationship to queerness and the Christians' relationship to queerness was at odds, because I was trying to hide it and they didn't know. And
Did you hide your Judaism? Did you hide that you're Jewish?
that I couldn't hide because there was like evidence on the internet And
Got it.
and also it was like politically expedient to be Jewish because they really get so excited when a Jew walks into a church. It's like,
Oh yeah.
like, oh my God, an original. Like they want to
The pre-Jesus people, the like
exactly. They're like, oh my God, let me show off all of the Hebrew words that I know how to mispronounce.
it's funny. I think you have some bits on that, no? You have some
Yeah, I have a
jokes
lot
about
of
that.
bits on that. All of my jokes about Christians, I mean, like they're just like, oh my God, you and Jesus are the same flavor. You're chosen. and I become like incredibly Jewy when I'm around a Christian. I'm like just trying to perform at them.
Jewiness.
Yeah, yeah.
What does
and
that
it's-
mean? You say, do you have gelt?
Yeah, I'm just like I'll start saying these things like that I like truly don't believe, where I'm like, oh, it's such a shame that you're missing out on so much theological context because you don't read the Mishnah.
Ah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
I don't read the Mishnah.
You don't read the Mishnah, but you
Yeah.
have the Mishnah
But
as
I'm
your
like-
as your inheritance.
Exactly. I'm like, you guys should try that maybe.
I love that.
But how this got me back into Judaism, I think, is like the end of the story and is important, is that like my relationship with Christianity was just feeling disingenuous at a certain point, and then like I happened to get invited to an Orthodox Shabbat dinner, and honestly, like they were such good singers that I was like, well, okay, great, they've got it here too. And
Ah,
I got a recommendation to go to this shul in Brooklyn, the Iyun Center, which is run by Rabbi Dover Pinson, and he is like a weird little Kabbalist who has weird, trippy opinions, and his wife, Rachi Pinson, is like the wisest person on earth, and they have great singers, especially because the band Zusha is always showing up to services, and so they're serious about singing, and they just had, I mean, they were like an amazing vibe, and so they really took me under their wing, both me and Artem, my husband, and like got me so into Judaism, taught me so much. I was there for like 6 or 7 years before I moved to LA, and I would just spend Shabbos services sitting next to the Rebbitzin being like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
oh wow.
What does that mean?
Artem is Jewish?
Yeah. Well, so he's half Jewish on the wrong side. His dad is Jewish.
Got it. What was that? Was that a Chabad place or was it?
Yeah, they're Chabad. Yeah.
Did they like say anything about Artem being half Jewish from his father's side?
Well, by that time, I had really, like, I had developed a deeper sense of self that, like, I don't care.
I
So,
see.
so I just walked in and was like, look, and they're Chabad, so they're really good at this. I was like, look, I'm living with my boyfriend at the time. We're obviously sleeping together. I also loudly call myself queer. Also, he's Jewish on the wrong side. Also, there are all these other things about me that are probably not following whatever specific rules you want to follow. And they were just like, all right, fine. She's showing up for
Wow.
services. That's amazing.
Wow. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about Chabad?
Oh, well, I think like in their best iteration, which I think that I did experience a version of, in their best version, they're amazing. Like in the best version of Chabad, they are non-judgmental and totally welcoming to all Jews, and show them a version of Judaism that is different and welcome them into it. That's what I experienced, was like, this Orthodox family welcoming me into their tradition, showing me around, teaching me about it, so much so that I have become a lot more observant because of things I learned from them, but there was never a pressure from them. It was just like they showed me around this beautiful culture, and I happened to like the things, and I took some, not all. So that I think is amazing, and their like spirit of welcoming Jews and kindness and non-judgmentalness and great music is amazing. In less successful iterations of Chabad, all of those things can turn into negatives, and some of those things like non-judgmentalness don't happen. And I think there's also a really big difference with how you're treated when you are, like me, an outsider being welcomed in, versus how the experience you have growing up in Chabad or becoming Baal Shuva and like fully committing, fully embracing.
Yeah.
Suddenly you get a very different set of expectations on you.
Yeah.
And so
That makes a lot of sense.
so those are downsides. And I would say that like I am lucky enough that I've been able to curate an exceptional Chabad experience for myself. But not everybody has that.
Yeah. You picked carefully and you knew not to set expectations that will then cause you to be essentially like rejected on the grounds of not meeting them.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's just talking to on our podcast Yenta. We just have a guest who's coming out in a couple of weeks, who talks about how she had a similar journey to me, from Reform to evangelical Christianity to Chabad and then out. And she talked about how similar Chabad and evangelical Christianity are, in that they are refuges for people in crisis, and they are really welcoming. But as soon as you declare your full allegiance, suddenly there's a huge amount of social pressure on you to follow all the rules perfectly.
Yeah, that's very interesting. We didn't define what Chabad is, and I'm sure there are quite a few people who are listening to this who don't know. Chabad is a group of Orthodox Jews, Hasidic Orthodox Jews that do outreach. They're the Jews who stop you in the street and say, "Are you Jewish?" With the men with the black hats and the black coats, and they have a mission to other Jews to bring them into the fold. Whereas I come from a Hasidic group where that doesn't exist and they don't care to bring you in. Chabad does. And to me, Chabad is really interesting because I didn't grow up with Chabad. I grew up with a very different attitude. We learned that you either do the mitzvah all the way or better not to do it at all. For instance, if you say a blessing when you're not wearing stockings, we were taught that you create, every time you make a blessing, you create an angel in heaven. But if you do it without wearing stockings, you create a crippled angel, an angel who is suffering. Yes, who's suffering. And so it was like better not to do it because there's going to be an angel up there who's like really suffering because you did it without stockings on. So the attitude from Chabad, which is, Antonia, come in, sing with us, and it's okay that you're doing all these things that are imperfect. To me, it's very heartwarming because I think it took me a while to get to this place, but it came to me to be like, oh, that is really wonderful to allow to meet Jews where they are at, because I think many of us want to be met where we're at. We want to be able to express our longing for religious connection. Like, yes, the singing is beautiful and it is spiritual. It's meaningful. It's elevated. I feel like I don't deserve it because I'm not wearing the tights or whatever it is, you know?
It's so interesting to hear how you grew up, because it really is like the kavanah, like the intention of how you do all of these things just like completely changes the experience. Like saying a bracha growing up was done,
A blessing.
yeah, saying a blessing growing up was done so that I could show off that I learned a lot in Hebrew school, period.
I see.
You saying a blessing growing up was to create an angel, and if you didn't do it right, you fucked the angel up. then there's this other, then there are all these other possible intentions of like just that I would say nowadays when I say a bracha, it's like part of it is to connect me to my ancestors. Part of it is because I just feel like there is some inherent something good that happens when I say a bracha,
Yeah.
and I don't even have the words to articulate what that is, but I just trust that like this is probably a good thing, and that takes me a step closer to something else that's good. I'm really bad at using language around like God and divine and transcendence because I don't really worry about it so much.
That's fair. That's
It's
fair.
all sort of a wordless feeling of like I say this bracha and it gets me closer to
That's fair. That's
you
fair.
know?
It's also saying a bracha, the ritual of saying something every time before you eat. When I was a child, it's like, this is what you have to do. Did you say a bracha? And to this day, when I do videos about food, I get comments all the time. People are like, you didn't say a bracha. You didn't recite the blessing. But when you think about it with like the intention of every time before I eat, I am going to practice gratitude, which is, you know, it might sound a little woo, but the process of saying I'm grateful for this little pleasure, for this little thing, it's of course very, it's good, right? It does bring us,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's you know, once it's become a rule for rule's sake, because you have to, and you have to create the angel, and you have to do, it's it's a different kind of thing.
It's so different. Like I was talking to someone about my experience with the mikvah. So the mikvah is it's like a ritual bath. It looks kind of like a very small swimming pool, but it can be that's how tradition like looks most commonly, but you can even do it in the ocean. Or other natural bodies of water, but basically it's the idea that immersing yourself fully in some body of water that meets some specifications is some kind of spiritual purification. There are a lot of different, I think, perspectives on mikveh. Can you flesh that out more for me, Frida?
Well, I mean, for me, I would say mikveh has two uses for women. One is if women convert, then they go into a special pool of water. It's like a spa-like place, right? Correct me or whatever, interject if I'm misrepresenting how you experience mikveh. But the way I knew it is if you're converting, you go to the spa-like place and you have to immerse yourself. And that experience I don't know much about. And the other iteration of mikveh is after a woman gets married, she has to separate from her husband in Orthodox Judaism during the periods that she menstruates and 7 days after she stops bleeding. And then she goes to the ritual bath and is reunited with her husband. And I think it strikes a lot of secular people's fancy media to imagine this like space where women go and they wash themselves and they go into the water and you can just see them cue up the dramatic music as the woman throws her hair back in that water and then like there's sex of course hanging in the air because on mikveh night a couple is reunited and they have sex. So like in the secular world it seems to be like this almost like voyeuristic fantasy, the mikveh, I think. And people love the idea of thinking about mikveh ladies, something happening there. Like there's almost like an erotica trope there, or like abuse, which I heard a lot about. Now, I'm not discounting. There are definitely, I'm sure, like abuse happens anywhere and everywhere. My experience, the mikveh, first of all, the mikveh ladies are like, they're like nail salon women. They're like looking to get the job done. They're trying to get you into the water and out of the water, out of your little preparation room. But also, I would say the mikveh was for me like an anticipation place. Like, oh, you're maybe going to have a date night or whatever. It was like not necessarily in a positive way, but not in any dramatic negative way. Like it depended on I think where the relationship is at, what mikveh night felt like. But the whole like, yeah, there's a lot to be said about mikveh.
Yeah, there's so much. And then there's the whole like it's so gendered. There's like the male side of mikvah where
Yeah.
it's not related to their cycle at all. They could go whenever for this sort of spiritual cleansing, and like they'll go before big days or like holidays or maybe Shabbos, I
Yeah.
would imagine.
No, I think they go Friday. The men's mikvah is so different. Like the women's mikvah, they are so concerned that you shouldn't run into like your mother. That would be really awkward, right? So they
Yeah.
put you like they bring you into a four room and they make sure that the hallway is empty before you go in. Like they're trying to get people not to see each other in the mikvah. So it's just you and the mikvah lady. It's very quiet. You hear pitter patter of feet. My understanding of the men's mikvah, which I was of course never in one, is that it's a very like chicken soup place. Is like everyone is like everything's hanging out, you're walking around, you're chatting. Like I heard this joke that like got stuck in my head about the mikvah for men that kind of like describes what the mikvah for men is. That the mikvah for men is a place where you get all the news. Like that's I've asked a Hasidic person who was telling me recently. This is a real story. It's not the joke. I'll tell you the joke in a minute. But like I ran into a Hasidic person, and he talked to me about certain news. Like, did you hear? Let's say so and so is running for election. I'm just making something up. And I said, where do you get your news? And he said, in the mikvah. So that's the kind of space the mikveh is. And I once heard this joke that kind of got stuck in my head that the president wanted to know what the people were saying, but he wasn't able to find out because wherever he went, there was such a brouhaha that he couldn't like go incognito. So he had an idea. He was going to go to the mikveh completely like, I don't know how he pulled it off. I don't know who the president was in this story. But he was going to like dress up as an everyday person and go to the mikveh and find out what the people are saying. So he did that, and he sits down in the water, and he like slides up to someone, another person in the mikveh, and he says, so what's doing? And the other person says, did you hear? The president is here. Get it? They were already knowing
good.
about it. The news traveled fast. The president didn't even finish soaking when I don't know if that's what a men's mikveh looks like, but that's my impression.
The idea of them all soaking like it's a hot tub is
I don't know if that's what
different
happens.
than the women's mikveh experience. It's so
I don't even know if they do that.
Everything about the mikveh is so crazy. And I feel like the thing we're not saying is that like a lot of women have so much trauma around the mikveh. Like I have a lot of friends who have left the Orthodox world, and a lot of them experience mikveh, and they have so much trauma about it for a lot of reasons that like we don't have to go into, but I think you covered a lot of them in your recent episode with the sex therapist.
Yes. We talked about it a little bit. Yeah. So what was your experience?
Well, so like my whole experience of Judaism as an adult is basically like I don't have religious trauma, so I can just walk into all of these beautiful rituals like a fresh little lamb and see, nothing but the good vibes. So I had like the world's greatest Kala teacher, the Rebbitzin of my shul. She just taught me all the Kabbalah about the mikveh and the water and the coming together and the separating that is involved with the water and with your spouse. I also reinterpreted the ritual to make it fit my life better, which is that like I did not restrict touching or sex with my husband at all. And I turned the mikveh but I still followed the timing of the mikveh, and so it became an experience for like me and my body rather than actually anything to do with my marriage, which I know is very, very different than the ritual is intended, but I'm so lucky that I get to experience it in this way and reinterpret it. So yeah, I absolutely love mikveh, and at the first time when I first started going, I had no idea that there was this like social taboo on mikvah. And so I would walk around Crown Heights. I was so excited to be doing something like really Orthodox. I was like, oh my God, I'm like living my Orthodox fantasy. I'd like put on a skirt and I was like, this is crazy. And I'd walk into shops in Crown Heights and just casually be like, I'm actually here to go to the mikvah. I'm going to the mikvah later.
Oh my God.
And like, I didn't realize
what happened. You got to look.
The reactions were horrified.
Oh, really?
And like, so yeah, just like shut down. Oh God, what is she saying? And I didn't understand at all why people were being so weird about it until later, when I learned that there's this like huge social taboo that you never ever say the night you're going to the mikvah, and there's all of this theatrics to keep people from knowing that you're going to the mikvah. But I was just like, you guys, isn't the mikvah awesome? I'm going to go to that in like an hour.
That's so funny because it's like related. First of all, you're giving away if you're pregnant or not, because if you're going to the mikveh, probably you're not pregnant. I mean, you might still bleed if you're pregnant, but probably you're not. And second of all, you're giving away when you're having sex. So
yeah,
but
I get it. I understand why people wouldn't want to talk about it. I also really, really wanted to talk about it.
I hear you. You had a good experience. You liked it. You liked the immersion. Was it like spiritually? Did you sing while you went down the mikveh steps?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't. I'm not. It's not like only singing.
It's not only singing.
Yeah, there's also like Orthodox drag is one of my favorite activities.
Wow. You're getting yourself in trouble. Orthodox drag.
I know. But that's the thing. It's like doing these rituals, regardless of the intention, I think is really like is a net positive for the Jewish people. So that's why I feel good about doing my little Orthodox drag.
I think we have these like inheritance of tradition that are so beautiful, and sometimes we have to make it work for how it makes sense to us, right?
Yeah,
it makes sense to Orthodox people in one way. It makes sense to us in a different way, and it's still our inheritance.
Exactly. And like the other side of this is that like I prefer to hang out with Jews who are doing all the things correctly.
Really?
Because I would like to be the iconoclast in the room. I'm like, can someone just be keeping the rules perfectly so that there's space for me to go do my own thing? Like, I get so embarrassed when I'm in rooms of Jews who are all like me and we're all just like making our own thing up. I'm like, oh, you guys, I feel like someone should just like say the whole thing.
Yeah, I hear you.
Like, it would be great if someone here chose not to eat the shrimp.
I see. It's like sets the standard for which you can deviate from.
I think really the thing is that I'm so contrarian that I would like to be the one Jew who's doing my own thing in a room of Jews who are all doing the same thing. Like, actually, when you ask me what kind of Jew you are, there's something happened recently and I was like, this perfectly defines my Judaism, where I went to this like Shabbaton, and Shabbaton is like a retreat over Shabbat, and they had a tea and coffee set up, but there's this like restriction for brewing things or like cooking things on Shabbos.
Yeah, you're not allowed to. Yeah,
so like you can't.
So they put in a percolator.
Yeah, like you can't heat up the water, so there's like this like automatic heating thing, but like some people won't even just put the tea bag in the cup and then pour the water over it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So they had this whole system where they had pitchers of tea concentrate, and then you poured a little tea concentrate in and then filled the rest up with hot water. And I was looking at this and I was like, my God, this is so much. Like, you guys, just give me a tea bag. Let's calm down. And then the next weekend, I was at a different shul that I was performing at, and there they had a tea and coffee set up, and it was just tea bags. And I stood there at that tea and coffee setup, and the first person who walked by, I was like, you know, you're actually not allowed to do this on Shabbos.
You're so bad.
And I was like, I'm just gonna drink hot water because
Yeah, I think this is very relatable. You know, there's something about seeing the rules. Like, I relate in a way to, like, these are the social expectations. And then, okay, it does, when you see it, then it becomes too much. It's like, okay, maybe it's a lot.
yes.
But when it's missing, then you miss it.
Yes, exactly. It also is like my relationship to art, where like all the art I do, I want to learn how to do it first, and I want to learn the correct way. Like, even when I was getting into stand-up comedy, I took a class on stand-up comedy, which is kind of an insane thing to have a class on because it's hard to teach. But I was like, I just want rules. I want rules. I want structure, so that then I can ignore all the rules and all the structure.
Yeah.
You know?
I get it. I don't know how you can do that with stand-up comedy, but I get how you can do it with Judaism.
Yeah.
Oh, I so love talking to you, Antonia. I'm really excited that our fellowship is meeting in Germany. That's going to be so fun.
No, I'm so excited. I'm honestly like,
we're going to have the best time.
My big thought is like cold weather wardrobe. You know, I'm in Los Angeles now, so I'm like really thinking like, oh, how is like my style gonna work in the cold weather of Berlin?
You wear jumpsuits, so you wear a jumpsuit made of faux fur, top to bottom.
Yes.
With just your eyes sticking out.
Done. Incredible pitch.
You like that? You're in. That's my plan. I don't do the cold well, and I'm already eyeing my thickest coat. I'm like, I'm just going to pack one suitcase of coats.
Yes.
And that's all. Maybe I won't even bring clothes besides, because probably I'll have to pay for the luggage if I bring more than my coats. Yeah. I'm just staying warm.
That's good.
January in Germany, that's the goal.
I have a couple practice trips. I'm performing in Vancouver at the end of November, and that's cold, and then I'm performing in the UK right at the end of December. So I'm like, okay, those will be practice trips. Also, for anyone watching, yes, you should go on my website and look at those show dates if you're in any of those places.
For sure. We're gonna on that note, we're gonna look at some of your comedy, stand-up comedy. How about that?
I love that.
You love that. You like to say in your comedy, like, I am the best.
Yeah.
You love that. That's a major shtick of yours. I'm gonna show your Reform Synagogue.
Perfect.
Okay. This is Antonia in comedy.
I want it warm but clinical, tall but claustrophobic, upholstered but hard. Duality, it's very Jewish. Color palette is beige, taupe, khaki, ivory, wood, and rainbow. The Gemara does specify it needs to be mid-century modern. For carpet, give me lecture hall. For ceilings, give me lecture hall. For seating, give me lecture hall. And for arc, give me opulence. Things on the walls. Now this is where we shine. Your options are stained glass or stained glass. The cost is exorbitant. The vibe is coloring book. And most of all, it's gonna look expensive. As the Torah says, the shorter your Passover Seder, the fancier your shul. It balances out.
If you know different types of Jewish communities, you get the joke.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I move in and out of so many different Jewish communities that I really can see how they all compare and contrast. And I'm constantly performing in different Jewish communities. So like, I'm going to these Reform synagogues all the time that are these like mid-century modern spaceships.
Oh, spaceships. I love that. I get it though.
Yeah. And it's crazy.
You know what's really interesting about you is you manage to straddle performing for different audiences and not alienating them. because there are different feeling, and you're touching on some raw nerves on both sides, right? Or on all sides.
Yeah. Yeah, and you really do need to tailor your comedy. I mean, performing for a reform crowd and an Orthodox crowd, they need different material.
Yeah.
There's plenty that they'll overlap on, but to get them into that, you just need different cues. Like, a reform audience, they both want to know that you're one of them.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to show up in the right outfit. You have to have the uniform correct, And
What's a
then
reform uniform?
I mean, like, like the more queer, the better.
Got it. Okay, got
Like-
it.
Like a jumpsuit works. Like Orthodox, these days, I really hate wearing skirts and dresses, but I'll do it if they really ask me to. But, covered, long.
Yeah, yeah.
I think jumpsuits can get away with. You can get away with a jumpsuit there a little bit more because it's a little closer to a dress, I think. But I'll throw on a skirt if I need to.
If you need to. No crop tops or mini skirts, which I have never seen you in the first place. Let me actually do play your mikvah, because that
Oh yeah.
hits a little more on comparing Orthodox and Reform. So, and it's relevant. We just discussed the mikvah.
Orthodox Jews love nothing more than helping other Jews. Reform Jews love nothing more than helping everyone other than Jews. Like, if Orthodox Jews wanted to build a mikvah, they would have $1 million overnight. If Reform Jews wanted to build a mikvah, first of all, half of you have no idea what a mikvah is. The other half are like, that's an outdated tool of oppression. But if you told Reform Jews that you wanted to build a very small, queer-friendly swimming pool, in 2 weeks, you'd be standing at the Esther Greenberg Memorial Trans BIPOC LGBTQIA Swimming Inclusion Zone.
I love that. That is so funny. What kind of reaction do you get for this bit?
Well, before the bit, I have to have a pre-bit to explain to the Reform Jews what a mikveh is.
I see.
And no, the reaction to this bit is always really good because I think, honestly, Jews love nothing more than making fun of other denominations and then making fun of their own denomination.
Yeah.
So this actually hits across crowds. And I decided to retire it, which is why I posted it on the internet. I think it just wasn't hitting as hard as other ones. And everything that gets posted on the internet is like normally the things I've decided to retire from my set.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I think once you see it on the internet, it just loses the surprise factor in shows, so it's not worth it to keep things.
I saw a bit online that I then saw in person the comedian perform, and it was just kind of like, a joke is very tricky. Hearing it twice can really ruin the first time for you. Like, this whole joke now it's contrived.
Yes, like it's annoying that comedy has such a shelf life, but like laughter comes from surprise so much of the time. And when you lose that sense of surprise,
Yeah.
the joke doesn't work as well.
Yeah. I hear that. How do you find as a comedian the culture for saying controversial things is, or you're not the type to say controversial things?
I know that there's this like big conversation, mostly it seems between non-comedians, about this question of like, can you say controversial things on stage? And honestly, like my take on that is pretty much the same take as this comedian Theo Von, who I would say politically, like we are doing extremely different things. He's like very bro comedy. He leans pretty Republican with his audiences. Um, but he said it the best, I think, which is just like, look, as a comedian, your job is to make people laugh. And if they're not laughing, that means you've done a bad job.
I see.
The end. So like, that's it. If you feel like audiences aren't responding to something you're saying because it's too controversial, then great, make it funnier. And maybe to make it funnier, you have to change the angle you're coming from.
Uh-huh. What if some people laugh and other people get outraged?
Then I would say you weigh your options.
I see.
That, it's like that requires judgment, and every situation is different. And sometimes it's just a couple people who are getting really triggered by something that maybe isn't a trigger for the majority. Or sometimes it's a lot of people don't like it and just a couple people like you. That's where it gets difficult. But even still, I do think that keeping your sights on making everyone in the audience laugh is a worthy goal, even though it's not going to happen every time. But I do think it is worth it to listen to the people who get outraged by your material. I mean, like, look, I think every single comedian says things and then gets bad reactions. That happens to me all the time. I'll say something and someone will be like, you can't, you just don't do that. And it's good feedback and I hear it and I move on because I want to have a good show.
I hear. Do you go anywhere near the subject of Israel, considering you're a Jewish comedian and you're a professional Jew?
So I don't in my shows, especially because I'm almost always booked as a night of like joy and healing away from the Israel discussions that people are having. So, and also the communities I'm performing for are still split on Israel.
Yeah.
Even if they think that they aren't split, they're split. And so the amount of comedy work it would do to get people to a place where they were de-escalated and open to laughing at that would take long enough that I'm not going to devote that much time in the show. Also, I still think that like talking about Israel in small groups, not in public right now, is the way that I feel like it has more impact. There is a lot of Israel talk in the public sphere, and it becomes like a competitive activity to be the most right to whatever audience you're talking to. And that is not something that I want to encourage, especially on stage.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I really keep my discussions about Israel to in-person communities where also people have the space to be wrong and no one's gonna boo them.
Yeah, that makes sense. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And on that note, we're coming around to wrapping up our discussion. I do want to finalize by talking a little bit about your singing that you lead, because it's really lovely, and I've been lucky to be in your singing groups, and I do love to sing. I think it's very beautiful to sit together and sing. Like, it's interesting what you said about singing it from religious perspectives. Very, very beautiful. You want to explain what you do?
Yeah, totally. So I'm just chasing the high, and I'm like very inspired by the lineage of Hasidic Jews who will take short melodies, often wordless, called nigguns or nigunim, and repeat them over and over and over until you sort of hit something big. And I'm also really inspired by the work that's coming out of the Rising Song Institute in New York, which is led by Joey Weissenberg. They were my first exposure to the style of this that takes the practice and infuses it with new Americana folk melodies as well, and I'm a big bluegrass fan. So I lead singing circles that happen in LA and, you know, whenever I travel, wherever I'm going to as well, that take both old Jewish melodies and also a lot of new Jewish music that I write as well. And a lot of it is wordless and short, and we just repeat it over and over and over until some people find a good harmony, or some people get brave and add something to it, and until basically like we all feel really, really good. And
can you sing? Can you give an example of what it sounds like?
Oh yeah, totally. Let's see, this melody, this is a nigun that I wrote for my building that I live in. And it goes, Yammadavai, Yammadavai, oh, Yammadavai, Yammai, Yammai, oh, I, Yammai, Ammayadai, oh, Ammayadai, Yammai, Yammai, oh, I, oh, Yammai, oh, I, oh, Yammai, oh, I, oh, Yammai, oh, I, oh,
Oh, that's so lovely. I love it. That's beautiful.
Thanks. And that really comes from my love of bluegrass music too. I think you can hear that in the melody, and the tradition of getting rid of the words from the Hasidic lineage, and just having syllables.
Beautiful.
And yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this talk. I really enjoyed talking to you. We're gonna link your website in your what else should we link in the video description so people can find you and come to your shows and sing with you?
Great, thanks.
And you can tell them when you're going to the mikveh.
That's exactly right. I want everyone to know when that's happening. Okay, website, AntoniaLassar.com. Instagram and TikTok at Antonia Lastar. Very cute. And yeah, I think that's where you should link them to. And
where are your dates?
My dates are on both my website and my Instagram and TikTok. And also check out my podcast, Yenta. It's a podcast that's sometimes about Judaism, sometimes about comedy, always about gossip. It is the premier queer Jewish podcast on the internet, and I co-host it with Ray Schiller, who's an amazing ex-Orthodox comedian. And we've sort of found our ways from opposite corners of Judaism to...
Great. We're going to link all of that in the video description, your website, your Instagram, your podcast. Antonia, thank you so much for sharing so much about yourself and for the good time, and to the viewers on YouTube and the podcast listeners, thank you all, and goodbye.